Amen.
Amen.
So anyway, I'm going to show you why I believe when we read this passage, it's in Genesis 6, 1 through 3, what it really means. What it really means, because it's important, because what does he say? Look what he says in Luke. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man, right?
Right.
So it's important to understand this passage, because it's going to be just like it was before the flood, just like it was in Sodom and Gomorrah. It's going to be just like that in our age when Christ comes back.
It is now.
Huh?
I said it is now.
And that's going to be my point today. It is now, but it's going to get worse.
Wow.
And so, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that now we understand who these are.
Right.
These are the faithful children of God.
Right.
Now, listen, remember, you can be born again. You can believe upon Jesus and not be his son. You can be the son of the devil. We learned that last week.
Right.
So when he talks about the sons of God, he is talking about the spiritual seed of faith. Those that are going to, he gave us power to become the sons of God, right? So he's talking about the sons of God. He's talking about the seed of the woman, not the seed of the devil, because remember, there's going to be there's going to be enmity between the devil's seed, and it's not a physical seed of the devil, is it? The devil didn't have sex with somebody. He's talking about the spiritual seed.
Right.
There's going to be enmity between the seed of the devil, which is the corruptible seed, and the seed of the woman, the sons of God, those that have faith, those that believe in the they're the incorruptible seed.
Right.
And so when what happened was these sons of God, these men of God that were of faith, they saw the daughters of men, that they were fair. They were pretty women.
Right.
And you know what they did? These believers,
There you go.
and we're not supposed to have what? We're not supposed to be unequally yoked with unbelievers. We're not supposed to be, we shouldn't even be, a faithful believer should not even marry a wife who is what?
I'm a believer.
Even if she's a believer, if she's not obedient, right?
Right.
So the problem is these sons of God saw that these women were pretty, and look what it says. They took them wives, with a what? S, of all which they chose.
Mm-hmm.
So they said all these pretty girls, and they took them as many wives as they wanted. And then look what it says. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with who? With the angels, right?
Man.
With man. Because man was the one that was committing the sins. Because he also is flesh. And so we see this. Look what it says. And as it was in the days of Noah, right, talking about this time here, right, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. Now look what it says. They did eat, they drank, they what?
Married wives.
They took them what?
Wives.
Wives. See, they married wives, they took them wives. And so that is going to be one of the prominent signs that we're getting toward the end. Mm-hmm. And now, but what I want you to understand is our definition of marriage and God's definition of marriage are not the same. When we think of marriage, we think, oh, you propose to your wife, you plan a day, you go to a church, the pastor stands before you, you say your vows, and you get what? Married. But in the Bible, what I'm going to show you is that is not what marriage is.
Fornication.
Marriage, and look at the definition of marriage. Look at that word, united, conjugal. Well, you've heard of conjugal visits, right?
Yes.
Look at conjugal. Conjugal means to yoke or couple or to join and yoke. Now, you've heard of a yoke of oxen. What a yoke of oxen is, two oxen that are what?
Yoked together.
yoked together to pull something.
Right.
So when you are united, or a couple, or you are what? Joined together, right? That is what it means to be married. So in God's eyes, when two people are yoked together, the couple becomes one, or they are joined together, that is marriage. Now, let me show you. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days, for the love he had to her. And Jacob said unto Laban, after he served he's talking about Rachel, right?
Right.
He says, give me my what?
Why?
For my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. Basically saying, I go in unto her to make her my wife, right?
Right.
I want to marry her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that Laban, he took Leah his daughter and brought her, Leah, to him. And Jacob, he went in unto her.
Right.
And Laban gave his daughter Leah Zilpah his maid for a handmaid. And it came to pass that in the morning, because it was night, now it's light, right?
Right.
Behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, now look what he says, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Jacob is confessing something. You know what he's confessing? That he just married someone, and that wasn't the person he wanted to marry.
Right.
In other words, by him going in, because he thought he was going into Rachel, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he was going into Leah. But guess what he did? He acknowledged that he just married who?
Leah.
He just married Leah. By doing what? By being joined together with her.
Right.
He says, did I not serve with thee for Rachel? Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me? So he understood that Leah was now his what?
Wife.
Leah was now his wife. Listen, he could, nowadays, you know what a man would say? Said, I didn't stand before a pastor. I didn't stand before a congregation. I didn't say I do and she say I do. No, God considers the person that you have a sexual relationship with as your what?
Wife.
As your wife. Now look at this. He says, and the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord had taken from man made he a woman. Now, just like Laban, look what Laban did. He brought Leah and brought her to what? Him. Now, look what God is going to do with Eve. And guess what? After he made the woman, he brought her unto what? The man. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be what?
One flesh.
So this Jacob understood that when he went in unto her, right? Because Laban brought her to him, and he went into her, and they consummated that marriage, right? Even though he did not know who it was, him and Leah had now become what?
Man and wife.
One flesh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look what he says. Look what he says about Isaac, and this is. I remember when Isaac, the servant, brings Isaac his wife back, Rebecca, right?
Right. And
Isaac brought her into. Remember, look, Laban brought her
to him.
To him. God brought Eve to Adam. And Isaac is going to brought her into his mother Sarah's tent.
Yes. And
he took Rebecca, and they stood before the pastor and before the congregation and said, I do, right?
No.
He took her, and she what?
Became his wife.
So the act of a man and a woman, sexual act of a man and a woman, right?
Yes.
Is what makes a husband and a wife one.
Yes.
That's not, the world's definition anymore. But we're not looking for what the world believes. We're looking for what God's saying. God says the act of intercourse between a man and a woman is what makes a woman a man's wife, and a wife, or a man, a woman's husband.
Right.
Now, the Pharisees, they came tempting him and saying unto him, talking to Jesus, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? In other words, can he just, because he wants to put her away, no matter what the reason, can he do it?
No.
And he answered and said unto them, have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, now look, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall what?
Cleave to his wife.
Cleave to his wife. Now, and they twain, which means two, shall be what? One. Wherefore, they are no more two, they're no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath what?
Joined together.
And that's what marriage is. Marriage, look again. Marriage is uniting, or what? Joining or yoking two people together as one.
Right.
So, it says, wherefore they are no more twain but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. They say unto him, why did Moses then command to give the writing of divorcement and to put her away? Right? Because that was their question. Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause?
No.
Right? And so they're saying, why did Moses then command to give the writing of divorcement and to put her away? He saith unto them, Moses, and here's the reason, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning, guess what?
It's not so.
That it wasn't so. So I say unto you, whosoever, remember, put away his wife, put her away, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for what?
Fornication.
Fornication. Now let's look at the definition of fornication. The incontinence or lewdness of unmarried persons, male or female. Also, now look what it also says. The criminal conversation of a married man with an unmarried woman, or adultery or incest. So fornication involves a lot of things. It can be incest. It can be adultery. It can be the lewdness of unmarried people. It can also be what they used to consider criminal. That was a man flirting, right?
Right.
A married man flirting with someone he shouldn't be flirting with, or a married woman flirting with someone she shouldn't. That's called fornication.
Right.
Because a lot of people like to say, yes, it's not always, they're not unfaithful. That's not unfaithfulness. Yes, that is unfaithfulness. And so he says, basically, you cannot put away your wife except it be for what? Fornication.
Right.
And shall marry another, right? Because if you put her away and you marry another, now what did we determine the word married means?
Joined together.
In other words, you've had sex with someone.
Right.
If you put her away and have sex with another person, you what?
Commit adultery.
And whosoever marrieth her or has sex with her, which is put away, doth what? Commit adultery.
Adultery.
Now, do you understand why I am replacing the word marry with what? Join, united, or yoked together? Because remember what Jacob said, right? He says, what is this thou hast done unto me? He acknowledges that when he went in unto Leah, even though he didn't know who she was, even though he thought it was someone else, that she was now what? Joined as one with him. It was his wife.
Right.
And so when you see the word marry, the Bible is not talking about what we consider marriage. The Bible is talking about, we have to let the Bible define itself, right? God has to tell you what he means. And he means when you have been joined together with a person, when you marry another, they committeth adultery. And whosoever marrieth her, which is put away, doth what? Commit adultery. His disciple, then what his disciple said? His disciple saying unto them, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to what?
Marry.
But what does it mean? It's not good to do what? Just have sex with other people.
Right.
In other words, they're not necessarily saying it is bad to marry one person. They're saying it is good not to marry in the sense that marrying means what? Being joined with people, other people, right?
Right.
But he said unto them, all men cannot receive the saying, save they to whom it is given. He says there are some eunuchs which were so born. In other words, they were born with never having the ability to what?
Have sex.
Have sex. And there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men. In other words, they were basically castrated.
Right.
And there be eunuchs, and I think I think Paul was a eunuch, not in the sense that he was castrated, but there are some eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for what purpose?
The kingdom of heaven.
In other words, they're a eunuch in the sense that they have forsaken off marrying and sex.
Right.
He says, he that is able to receive it, let him receive it. So, Mark says it this way. He says, and in the house his disciples ask him again of the same matter. And he saith unto them, whosoever shall put away his wife, the person that he's had what? He's already consummated the marriage, right?
Right.
And marry another committeth what? Adultery against his wife, against her.
Right.
And if a woman shall put away her husband and be married or lay with another, she committeth what? Adultery. For the woman which hath an husband is bound by the law to her husband so long as he liveth. This is the law. This is God's law. But if the husband be dead, she is loosed from the law of her husband. They can't be two flesh because he's now what? He's dead. They can't be one flesh now. So then if while her husband liveth, she be married to another, she's with another man, she's sleeping with another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is loosed, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man. So basically, if that man's living and she's with somebody else, sleeping with someone else, she's an adulteress.
Right.
But if her husband's dead, she is not bound. She is loosed. She can marry someone else, or she can do what? When I say marry, she can what? Be joined together with another man. So, and it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph. We know the story. And she said, do what?
Lie with me.
Lie with me. So I think he was in Potiphar's house, right? Was it Potiphar's? And yes. His wife, and Joseph was obedient and trustworthy, and all of a sudden his wife wanted Joseph to lie with him. And he refused and said unto his masters, he realized it wasn't his wife. Joseph realized it was his master's wife, not his wife. He said, behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in his house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me, but who? Thee. Why is he keeping back his wife? Because thou art what? His wife, not my wife. How then can I do this what? Great wickedness and sin against God. Joseph realized, this is not my wife. If I lie with her and give her what she wants, right?
Right.
It's great wickedness and I am sinning against God.
Yes.
She is married to another man. She is another man's wife, not my wife.
That reminds me of Jimmy Carter. You know,
Yeah.
he admitted that he committed adultery because he looked on a woman, you know, in a lustful way, I reckon. So that's what she looked on Joseph that way.
Yeah. And David looked on Bathsheba that way, right?
Right.
And so what I'm basically saying to you guys is the way the world is going to be when Christ has come back is the way it was in the days of Noah and the way it was in Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's going to be that way in this world, is not going to be angels having sex with human beings and having giants. Right. It's going to be sexual perverseness, lewdness, immorality everywhere. Amen. There's nothing that will be off limits. And if you say that it's off limits, if you say that homosexuality is a sin, if you say that fornication and adultery and pornography and all those things are sin, they're basically going to persecute you. Oh, the world is going to turn into just like it was in the days of Noah and just like it was in Sodom.
Yes.
And that's remember what God said about, what did he say about Abraham, about Sodom and Gomorrah? I can hear the cry of what? The city. Sodom and Gomorrah is crying out to me because of all the wickedness that is there. So now, what he says in the Exodus, he says, if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed, and he does what? He lies with her.
Yeah.
Look what it says. He shall surely endow her to be his wife. When you lie with someone, they become your what? Wife. To endow means to furnish with a portion of goods or estate called dower, to settle a dower on, as on a married woman or widow. A wife is by law entitled to be endowed of all lands and tenements of which her husband was seized. In other words, when the husband dies and the wife is still living, she gets what? The inheritance.
Yes.
Of her husband. Right? So what he's saying here is if you entice this woman, right, you trick her, you beguile her, whatever you did to get her to lie with you, you shall surely what? Endow her to be your wife. In other words, she is basically going to be entitled to what?
What you got.
What you have. She's your wife now because you tricked her and so she would sleep with you, and now guess what? She is your wife. Right. He says, Paul says, for I would that all men were even as I myself, but every man hath his proper gift of God, one after this manner, another after that. I say therefore to, look what it says, I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide, guess what? Even as what?
Myself.
Even as I am, right? As myself. Because he is what? Unmarried.
Right.
But if they cannot contain, let them what?
Marry.
Let them marry. Now, when he says marry, guess what he means? Be joined to one person. Right. To go into that person, to marry them, to become one flesh. Because he said it is better to marry than to what? To burn. And unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord, let not the wife what? From her husband. And if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband. And let not the husband put away his wife, except for fornication and adultery. Right? So what we're seeing in the last days is something that we saw in the times of Noah. We saw it in Sodom and Gomorrah. Is that people, they don't realize that every time they sleep with a different person, guess what? They are being joined unto them. That person in God's eyes are, guess what? Their wife.
Right.
Every time you sleep with a person, God looks at them as your wife, because that's his definition of marriage, is it not?
Yes.
He's not, you don't have to stand in front of a congregation and make vows and say, I do. When you go, that's why Jacob says, what is this that has done to me? He acknowledges that when he went in unto her, even though he didn't know who she was, guess what? He had become one flesh, right?
Right.
David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they were also, both of them, what? His wives. But Saul, so David already had these wives, right? Multiple wives. But Saul had given Michal, is that her name, Michael or Michal?
Either one.
Yeah. Saul had given Michal, his daughter, what? David's wife. Saul gave his daughter, who had been David's wife, because David had went into her and made him his wife, to Phalti, the son of Laish, which was of Gallim. So here is David, right? He's gonna, when Saul finally dies and he becomes king, right? This one of his wives, Saul had taken and given her to another man.
Right.
Now watch this. Whoops. Where is it at? Okay. And Abner sent messengers to David on his behalf, saying, whose is the land? Saying also, make thy league with me, and behold, my hand shall be with thee, to bring about all Israel unto thee. And he said, well, this is David talking to him, to Abner, I will make a league with thee, but one thing I require of thee, that is, thou shalt not see my face, except thou first bring who?
Michal, his first wife.
Right here. Because Saul had given her away to Phalti, right?
Yes.
And he's saying, you know what? You first thing you need to do is bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when thou comest to see my face. And David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, deliver me, what David calls her, my what?
My wife.
Which I espoused, betrothed, promised, or engaged in marriage by contract, right? To marry, to unite intimately, indissolubly means it's not going to be dissolved. He's married. He considers Michal his wife. And so Ishbosheth sent and took her from, look what he says.
Husband.
Isn't that weird? David is her husband, and guess who else is her husband? Phaltiel. He took her from her husband, even from Phaltiel, the son of Laish, and her husband went with her along, weeping behind her to Bahurim.
Weeping.
So listen, when David slept with, when he went in unto Michal, she became his wife.
Yes.
When Michal went into Phaltiel, guess what? Michal became.
Yes.
Or guess what? That Phaltiel became her what?
Husband.
So she now has how many husbands?
Two.
2 husbands. So now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children. She had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, behold now, the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee. Now what's she saying? Is she going to regret this? Yes.
Oh, yes. We all do.
Yeah. listen, I'm going to show you it's not meant to have more than one wife.
Right.
It's not meant to have more than one husband.
Right.
I pray thee, go in unto my maid. In other words, go into her and sleep with her. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her, just like God the Father gave Eve to Adam, Laban gave Leah to Jacob, right? Now Sarah is giving Abraham her handmaid.
Right.
And he gave her to her husband Abram. Now look what it says: to be his wife. So Sarah was what? Abraham's wife. And now guess what? Hagar is now what?
His wife.
His wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. Do you see the problems that having more than one spouse, having more than one wife, having more than one husband cause? All the problems that it causes?
Oh, yes.
Causes a lot of problems, doesn't it?
Yes.
Well, guess what? As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it also be in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank. Guess what?
Married wives.
If you look at what the real definition of word marry means, it means they married wives. So every time they go, and I don't want to get into too much, talking about too much evil and wickedness of the world, but in the pornography industry, these people go into what? Hundreds, probably some of them thousands of different people,
Right.
and sleep with them.
Right.
And they don't realize something. They're marrying wives. They're becoming joined to these people.
Right.
And I'm going to show you why in a little bit, what that does to you. Because you become spiritually connected to that person.
Right.
There's something that happens when you share the marriage bed with someone. He says they did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage. Now that term given in marriage means what did Laban do? He gave Leah, right, to be given in marriage. You're given away. And so they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. So that's the way it was in the days of Noah. Likewise, also as it was in the what? The days of Lot. They drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded, but the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the days when the Son of Man is revealed. And that's the thing is that's why he destroyed Lot. I mean, that's why he destroyed Sodom. He says, if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved into judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them what?
Example.
An example. The things that were going on in the times of Noah, the flood, the things that were going in Sodom and Gomorrah when he destroyed it with fire, he's giving you an example of what is going to happen when the Son of Man comes back. He says, he's making them an example unto those that after should live ungodly, that should live wickedly. And that's what it says. He says, where's it at in Genesis? I'll go all the way back up here. My spirit shall not always strive with man. He's going to destroy the world with a flood. Now, hold on, I lost my place here. Okay, here we go. So talking about Lot, he says, and delivered just Lot. Now look what he says, because he's living in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? He's living in Sodom. He says, vexed, his soul is vexed with what? The filthy conversation of the wicked. Now, all you got to do is watch TV for a while, listen to the radio for a while, hang out with the boys for a while, and guess what you're going to hear?
Guilty conversation.
Filthy conversation. For that righteous man dwelling among them, look what it says, in seeing and hearing, right? Hearing what? The filthy conversation. He vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their what? Their unlawful deeds. So the Lord know how to deliver the godly out of temptation and to reserve the unjust unto the day of judgment to be punished. But now look what he says. Because this is going to be like the days of the Son of Man too. But chiefly them that what?
Walk after the flesh.
Because that's what sexual sin is. It's trying to do what? Satisfy the lust of the flesh. But chiefly them that walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanness and despise government. Presumptuous are they, self-willed. They are not afraid to speak evil of dignities. Whereas the angels, which are greater in power and might, bring not a railing accusation against them before the Lord. But these people, these in the last days, they are as what it says, as what? Natural brute beast. Does a male dog marry a female dog and that's remain faithful to that dog for the rest of their life?
No.
You know why? Because they're natural brute beast.
Right.
They just respond based upon how they feel and their lust. And we're not supposed to be like that. We have laws that we're governed under.
Right.
But in the last days, just like the times of Noah and the times of Lot, as natural brute beasts, we're made to be taken and destroyed. We speak evil of the things that they understand not, and we shall utterly perish in their own corruption, and shall receive the reward of unrighteousness as they that count it pleasure to ride in the daytime. Spots they are, blemishes, sporting themselves with their own deceivings while they feast with you. Know what it says? Yes.
What about what you got highlighted right there? But these as natural brute beasts, made to be taken and destroyed.
Yeah.
What are they talking about in the speak evil things?
He's talking about human beings that are basically fleshly.
Right.
They walk by whatever they feel.
Right.
In other words, sexual sin is going to be the prevalent thing in the last days.
Right, I understand that, but the next part, made to be taken and destroyed, made me think about abortion. The natural brute beasts, that's what they do. They have they get babies and they go destroy them.
I'll look at that. I think he's actually talking about the people that are committing these sins.
Oh, okay.
Because what do we do with beast? So I don't know. I'll be careful about when I say that. I'll look at that. I'll look at that this week and see what I think about it. I actually just think he's just talking about the people that are walking after the flesh. If you walk after the spirit, you shall live. If you walk after the flesh, you shall what? You shall die.
Right.
And so, as a natural brute beast, you're walking after the flesh, right? Matter of fact, that's what he says. Chiefly them that what? That walk after the flesh. Look what he says about them. Having eyes, what?
Full of adultery.
Whoops. Well, hold on one second. Having eyes full of adultery. And so, and that's what we see. They basically, that's all they're consumed with.
Right.
Is their flesh. Right. Adultery. Matter of fact, he says, having eyes full of adultery, because if a man look upon a woman to lust after her, he's what?
Committed sin.
He's already committed adultery. And look what he says. And that, look what he says, cannot cease from what? They have an unstable soul. In other words, your soul is you. It's who you are. When a lust comes upon you, you need to be able to do what? You give into it, or
no? You
should be able to fight and resist it and not give into it, right?
Right.
But if your soul is unstable, every time the sin comes along, guess what you do? You cannot cease.
Yeah.
You know why? Why can they not cease from it? Because they have a heart. They have what? Exercised. In other words, why does a man turn and look at a woman every time she walks by?
Because he does it all the time.
Because every single time he does it. And until he starts exercising mentally not to look, turn and look, guess what he's going to keep doing it unless he starts practicing and not doing it and fighting and resisting it. And then eventually it becomes what?
Practice.
It becomes a natural thing to him, right? But these eyes full of adultery that cannot cease from sin because they have an unstable soul, because they've exercised with covetous practices. They practice it. They exercise it. It's what they do. He says they're accursed children. Now look what he says. Which have forsaken the right way and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam. Now you remember Balaam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Balaam was the prophet of God who, what had happened is the children of Israel had come in and they had taken, I think it was Ammon, which was north of Moab. Now the Ammonites had at one time, the Moabites at one time had owned that land until the Ammonites come in and took it from them. Mm-hmm. But they didn't take all the Moab's land, so Moab still had land south of where they were. But so when they came up out of Egypt and they were headed to the promised land, God told them not to bother Moab, because Moab was one of the sons of Lot, and he gave them that land. So they ended up destroying Ammon and taking the land. And so Moab, the king of Moab, which was Balak, he thought, oh, they're going to come down here now and kill us. Mm-hmm. So that's when he called for Balaam. And remember what Balaam did? He says, because Balak wanted him to curse the people. And he said, I can't speak anything that comes out of my mouth but what God has given me, right? Right. And then God told him, says, if the men come in the morning, you go with them. Well, the men didn't come, but guess what Balaam did? He rose up and went with them. Right. And Balaam, even if you looked at him, seemed like a fairly righteous man, because Balaam would not curse God's people. Right. So when he says following the way of Balaam, what does he mean? What was Balaam's main sin? And I'm going to show you. And to the angel of the church in Pergamos write, these things saith he which hath the sharp sword with two edges. I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is. And thou holdest fast my name, and hast not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you, where Satan dwelleth. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of what? Balaam, right? Yes. And we don't want to follow the way of Balaam. Now here was Balaam's sin. Who taught Balak, which was the king of the Moabites, right? Right. He didn't curse God people, but he taught Balak how to do something. To cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel. How did he do that? To eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to what? Yeah, fornication. Fornication. See, what he taught him was, have your women go in, and guess what they'll do? They'll take your women, and their women will take your men, and that way, guess what? Once you're intermingled with them, guess what they won't do? They won't destroy you. So, look what he says here. He says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, right? Because here's the problem is, our heart they have exercised with what? And when we think about covet, we think about coveting someone's house or coveting their goods or their money. But God says, thou shalt not covet what? Neighbor's wife. It's his wife. Joseph didn't covet Potiphar's wife, did he? No. So what does the word covet mean? Well, the Bible will tell you. Neither shalt thou what? Desire the neighbor's wife. So to covet means to what? Desire. Desire. And just in case you have any doubt about that, the definition of covet is to desire inordinately, to desire that which is unlawful. So here's the problem is, in the last days, these men are going to be just like animals. They're going to have eyes full of adultery. They're going to be looking at every woman. They're going to be lusting after every woman. They can't stop sinning. Their souls are unstable because they've exercised themselves with what? Covetous practices. Following the way of Balaam, right? They've been taught to commit fornication. It's all right. There's nothing wrong with it. It's everywhere, right? It's on TV. It's on the internet. We don't say nothing when someone gets divorced for any reason. We don't say anything when people marry, when a believer marries an unbeliever or listen, pretty much we're living in the age where sexually, is there anything, even in California now, what are they starting to do? They got some pretty sick laws now, right? People moving out of California. Yeah. So we're getting to an age where everything is beginning to become like it was in the days of Noah and like it was in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right.
And here's the reason. This is what Balaam did. He taught, right?
Yes.
He taught them through fornication to cast a stumbling block among God's people. Now, God's people back then were the Israelites. We're God's people now, right?
Right.
Anybody that believes upon Christ is God's people.
Right.
And so what is going to be the stumbling block? It's going to be the same thing. Fornication. Mm-hmm. Now, when thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, and shalt possess it, and shall dwell therein, and shalt say, I will set a king over me. So God's going to set up a king like all the nations that are about me. Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom the Lord thy God shall choose. One from among thy brethren thou shalt set king over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother, but he shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt, to the end that he should multiply horses. For as much as the Lord hath said unto you, ye shall henceforth return no more that way. So God said, I'm going to set up a king. Now we got to get what he's saying about this king. When he sets up the king, he says, now this can apply to every people, but he's talking about the king, right? Mm-hmm. Neither shall he what? Multiply wives to himself. Mm-hmm. He should not have many wives. You know why? What's the purpose? That his heart turn what?
Another way.
Because that's what happens when you have more than one wife. Mm-hmm. Your heart gets turned away from the Lord. Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. And it shall be when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book out of that which is before the priests the Levites, and it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life to remind him, right, not to do this, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, to keep all the words of this law and these statutes to do them. You know why? What is the purpose that I'm writing these things down? What is the purpose of him not multiplying wives? That his heart be not lifted up above his brethren, and that he what? Turn not aside from the commandment. That his heart not turn away from God. And that's what happens when you multiply wives or you multiply husbands. You turn your heart away from serving God. And so that's what he just said about the king, right?
Right.
Now look what he says. But King Solomon loved many, what?
Strange women.
Strange women. Now look what it says. Together with the daughter of Pharaoh. Who was the daughter of Pharaoh? You remember? It was his wife. Remember his first wife. Remember Pharaoh gave him what? This was Solomon's wife. But Solomon loved what? Many strange women. Now look what it means by strange. Now it can mean foreign, belonging to another country, not domestic, right? Or it can mean new, not before known, heard, or seen, right? Uncommon, unusual. So he had many wives. He knew many strange women that he had not known before, right?
Right.
And every time he would sleep with one, guess what God considered that woman?
His wife.
His wife. Of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these. Look at that word clave or cleave. To stick, to adhere, to hold to unite, to be united closely in interest or affection. Do you know what happens when you sleep with someone? You become connected to them. You become one.
Yes.
People can't see it. Listen, I can speak from experience. Personally, I can speak from just knowing, being around people. My point is that the word cleave, when you are intimate with someone, something happens. And sometimes, and it's the advice that I will always give to young girls, is that the reason you don't sleep with a man until you're married to them is because you become intimately connected to them. What happens is what you're supposed to do is you get to know them, you fall in love with them, and then what sex does, it makes that intimacy even more intimate, right? It makes your love more a stronger bond with that person. Whereas if you have sex before you know them and before you fall in love with them, guess what? There's still a bond there.
Yeah.
And if you hate each other and you fight and you argue all the time, you know what you'll see them do? They'll break up, and guess what they'll do?
Find somebody else.
Well, or they'll get back together. They'll fight, they'll argue, they'll break up, they get back together. They fight, they argue. It's kind of like it's this long-term thing. Now, sometimes, you're right, they'll go to a different person. But sometimes it'll be this long, unending thing where they have this connection and they just don't understand. They can't stand the person, but yet guess what they keep doing? They keep going back. They keep going back to that person. So anyway, so he basically had many strange women. And look what it says. Solomon clave unto these, and he had, guess what?
700 wives.
Now, do you think that they were all of them were always around?
God, I hope not. 300 concubines and 700
So
wives.
do you think that he had a day lined up? I mean, I guess with 360 something days a year, you had to have, like, if you were going to be with him one time a year, I mean, that would be almost two women every day, all year long, just to be with him one time. So I think what is
and 300 concubines, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, and so I think my point, but what God's trying to tell you is there's probably a lot of these women that he slept with one time.
Right.
But God says, guess what?
They're his
wife, because he did what? He married them.
Yeah.
And guess what? His wives turned away his what? His heart. And isn't that why he warned them?
Right. Turn your heart away.
Neither shall he multiply wives to himself at his what?
He turned away.
And that's what he did. Every time he slept with a woman, guess what? He ended up, God said he had 700 wives.
Wow.
And, oops, where was I at? I lost my place.
1,000 women.
Okay. For it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect. And we'll go down here. And likewise did he for all his strange wives. So the word strange just means new. It basically means women that he had not known before, right?
Right.
He slept with them, and they became strange wives
Right.
to him. So you're going to see that word strange in the last days. He says, even as Sodom and Gomorrah, because that's what the days of the Son of Man are going to be like, right?
Right.
And the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to what? And going after what? New women all the time. They're not content with one wife. They're always going after new women. New women are going after new men. He says, giving them, that's what Sodom and Gomorrah was about, was giving themselves over to it. That's what they were consumed with. He says they're set forth as an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Likewise, also these filthy dreamers defile the what? The flesh. That is what it's going to be like.
Is that going like in Sodom and Gomorrah, going after strange flesh? Is that like male and male and female and female?
No, I don't think he's talking about that. Because that's what you would think, but I think that word strange just means new. In other words, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a man and a woman. It's just somebody that you don't know.
Right.
It's a one night, you hear people talk about one night stands and stuff like that.
Right.
That's strange flesh.
Right.
And I think that's the age that we live in. I mean, that's the age that Hollywood, that's all you see on TV, the pornography industry. I think that is what Sodom and Gomorrah was like. You can't say nothing against nobody. You can't tell them this is a sin, this is not a sin. It's whatever feels good to you is all right to do. If you don't, listen, they'll tell you, if you don't want to do it, that's fine, but don't tell us what we should do.
Right.
But what did Enoch do? He prophesied of these, saying, the Lord cometh to execute judgment upon all and to commence all of their ungodly deeds which they've ungodly committed. This is the thing that Enoch was. Think about it. Enoch died. Enoch was the great-grandfather of Noah, right? The world had already started to turn what? Corrupt. Right. Enoch was going around and preaching this right before the flood.
Right.
And so now, guess what we have? We have a time in our age where guess what's happening? The exact same thing. We see the flesh. We see any kind of sexual promiscuity, that anything that you want to do, guess what? It's all right.
Mm-hmm.
Jude says that these are murmurers, complainers. Guess what they do? They walk after their own lust. He says their mouths speak great swelling words, having men's persons in admiration because of advantage. He says, but beloved, remember ye the words which were spoken before of the apostle of our Lord Jesus Christ, how that they told you there should be mockers when?
In the last time.
Who should walk after their own ungodly lust. These be they who separate themselves, guess what? Sensual. What is sensual? Pertains to the senses. Sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. That is what people are consumed with. Does it taste good? Does it look good? Does it feel good? Sensual means devoted to the gratification of what? The senses. They're sensual. That's what that's what Sodom and Gomorrah was. That's what was going on in the world in the time when when the world was destroyed by a flood. It wasn't angels. It doesn't say that. He doesn't say that angels, right? That my spirit shall not always strive with angels. Good men that were supposed to be godly men, because girls were pretty, guess what they were doing? They were going in and making wives of whoever they wanted to. Strange flesh.
Right.
So, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers doing what? Walking after their own lust. That's the age we're living in. He says this, know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's what? Wife. That's what men do. They don't care whether that's your wife or your girlfriend or the person you're going to marry. They're going to covet after her. They're boasters. They're proud. They're blasphemers. Disobedience to parents. They're unthankful. They're unholy. They're without natural affection. And now listen, I know that can mean homosexuality, but I don't think that's just what's a natural affect. What's affection? You have affection for the people you want. Love. But these people don't have a natural affection. They don't care who they sleep with. They don't care. It's purely about what? Being lovers of what?
Selves.
Their own selves. They're truce breakers. They're false accusers. They're incontinent. And I think that's the word, incontinent. No restraint over the passions or appetites, particularly the sexual appetite, and indulging lust, what it says, without what? Without restraint or in violation of law, unchaste, lewd, unable to what? Restraint. Remember what he says up here? He said that, find the verse. Having eyes full of adultery, and that what? Cannot cease from sin. That's what incontinent means. It means unable to what? They cannot cease from sin. In the sense of immediate or immediately. In other words, the lust of the flesh is so bad, right? They need to do what? They got to give into it right then and there. If it feels good, guess what they want to do?
Do it.
And that lust takes over. And guess what? There's no restraint. They're unable to restrain it. And that's what we see. Before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot, and said unto him, where are the men which came in thee this night? Now the way it says, bring them out unto us. Remember, God brought Eve unto Adam. Laban brought Leah unto Jacob, right? These men are telling Lot to bring these men out to us for what reason? That we may know them. And Lot went out of the door unto them and shut the door after him and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. What did God say about the times of Noah? That what was so bad about the earth? It was full of wickedness, was it not? He says, behold now, I have 2 daughters which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out to you. And do you to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore they came under the shadow of my roof. And they said, stand back. And they said again, this one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge. Now will we deal worse with thee than with them. And look, this is how bad their lust is. Look, they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to do what? Break the door down. But the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house to them and shut to the door. And they smote the men, these angels smote these men that were at the door of the house with blindness. So their lust, that cured their lust, didn't it? No. They just went home. No. They smote them with blindness, both small and great, so that they what? Wearied themselves to find the what?
The door.
They were still trying to get in.
Yes.
They needed to satisfy their lust so bad, right? And that's what incontinent means. They need immediately what? To be able to satisfy their lust of their flesh. Right. They're unable to restrain anything. And that's going to be the sign of the last days. And he says, and behold, there came an old man from his work out of the field at even, which also of Mount Ephraim, and he sojourned in Gibeah. But the men of the place were, see, now these aren't even unbelievers. These are God's children. They're Benjamites, right? Living here. And when he had lifted his eyes, he saw a wayfaring man in the street of the city. And the old man said, Whither goest thou? And whence comest thou? And he said unto him, We are passing from Bethlehem, Judah, toward the side of Mount Ephraim, and from thence am I. And I went to Bethlehem, Judah, but I am now going to the house of the Lord, and there is no man that receiveth me to house. Yet there is both straw and provender for our asses, and there is bread and wine also for me, and for thy handmaid, and for the young man which is with thy servants. There is no want of anything. And the old man said, Peace be with thee. Howsoever, let all thy wants lie upon me. Only lodge not in the street. You remember what Lot told the angels? Not to lodge in the street, right? Come into my house. Because he understood that it was dangerous. So he brought him into his house, and he gave him provender unto the asses, and they washed their feet, and did eat and drink. Now as they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, certain sons of Belial. Wait a second. He said they were what?
Benjamites.
Can Benjamites be sons of Belial?
Yes.
Can believers be sons of the devil?
Yes.
Yeah. Certain sons of Belial beset the house round about, and beat at the door, and spake to the master of the house, the old man, saying, Bring forth the man that came into thine house, that we may what?
Know him.
And the master of the house, went out unto them, and said unto them, Nay, my brethren, nay, I pray you, do not so wickedly. The wickedness in the earth is going to become so great that God, just like the days of Noah, and just like Lot, the cry is going to become so great to him that he's going to look, and is he going to even find faith in this earth?
No.
And he's going to destroy it.
Yes.
Seeing that this man is coming to thine house, do not this folly. Don't do so. What is folly? It is weakness of intellect, and I'm going to show you what that means in just a second. Why is it weakness of intellect? He said, don't do this folly. He said, Behold, here is my daughter, a maiden, and his concubine. Them I will bring out now, and humble ye them, and do with them what seemeth good unto you. But unto this man do not so vile a thing. But the men would not hearken to him. So the man took his concubine and brought her forth unto them, and they knew her, and they abused her all the night until the morning. That's wickedness. That is evil. That it is folly. See, folly means weakness of intellect. You know what an imbecile is, right? Imbecility of mind, want of understanding, depravity of mind. Why is this thing? Why does this thing have to do doing stuff like this? Why is this weakness of intellect? I'll show you. Whoso committeth adultery with a woman, whoever does any of these like fleshly, lustly, sexual sins, guess what? They lack what? It's weakness of intellect. It's depravity. It's imbecility. If you commit adultery with a woman, you lack understanding. You know why? Because this is what it does to you. When you commit sexual sins, he that doeth it, guess what he's doing? See, we're trying to save our souls. From the day that you become a believer, the Word of God is able to save. You know, the Word of God is able to save your soul.
Yes.
It regenerates you. It saves you. If you will read it every day and do what you're supposed to do, God will regenerate and he will change you into the image of Christ. But if you commit adultery, you commit fornication, fleshly lust, guess what? Dearly beloved, he says, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, don't give in to these things, but what? Abstain from what?
Yes.
What do? They war against the soul. They destroy the what? They destroy the soul. That's what all this sexual sin is doing to the believers in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, in the last days, He says, and in that day, 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat on their own. They want to have their own bread. They want to have their own apparel. He says, only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. So one of the things you'll see in the last days is women who want to be married. They want that image, right, to take away their reproach. But guess what? They want their own job. They want their own car. They want their own bank account. They want everything. But yet, they will take a hold of one man, 7 women. Now, and that's just part of the sexual perversion that we live in the last days. He says, know you not that your bodies are the members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them the members of a harlot? God forbid. What? Know you not that he which is joined, he that marries, he that sleeps with, right? To a harlot is what? Is one body.
Yes.
Every time that a man sleeps with another woman, he marries her. That's why it said that Solomon had 700 wives. I'm sure Solomon didn't there's a bunch of them that was one time.
Right.
I mean, or he's a man that I ain't never met before.
Mm-hmm.
He says, for 2 saith he shall be one flesh.
Right.
But he that is joined or married to the Lord is one spirit. Understand, the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. Mm-hmm. So your spirit is the candle and his spirit is the flame. Right. He lights your candle. You become one. And you look what he says. Flee what? When you see a harlot coming, don't witness to her. Don't talk to her. You turn the other way and do what? You run. Because the flesh it's just, our hearts are deceitfully wicked. Don't trust yourself. Man, I don't trust my flesh. I don't trust that. God tells you to flee it. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. What? Know you not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which you have of God, and you are not your own? For you are bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body and your spirit, which are God's. And so, as we close, that is what I believe we see where it's so easy to get deceived if you think that we're waiting on angels and these angels are going to have sex with women and giants are going to start appearing, and that's what we're waiting for. If that's what you're waiting for, you will not realize something. That guess what? You're in the midst of what? Just like the days of Noah. All you got to do is look. Turn on the TV. Go to watch a Hollywood movie. Turn on the internet, and guess what? You're living in the last days. God says he's not going to strive with man. He says, my spirit shall not always what? Strive with man. How long do you think God's going to put up with this? So I'm going to tell you what God says to do. Because there are certain people, and y'all are blessed in the sense that y'all have been, how long y'all been married now?
58 years.
58 years. That's not what happens nowadays for most people. Now, y'all know that. It happens in my family. It happened in y'all's family. And it's sad. But God has a solution. He says, and I'm going to show it to you. He says, in those days also saw I Jews that had what? Married wives. So when we see the word married, we know that means that they went into them, right? They became one. They became joined together. They had married wives of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab. And their children, because they married these wives of these different countries, which they weren't supposed to, their children that were born spake half in the speech of Ashdod and they could not speak in the what? The Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. And I contended with them, this is Nehemiah, and cursed them, and smote certain of them, and plucked off their hair, and made them swear by God, saying, Ye shall not give your daughters unto their sons, nor take their daughters unto your sons, or for yourselves. Now look what he says. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, do what? Sin by these things. Yet among many nations was there no king like him, who was beloved of his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, even him did outlandish women cause to sin. Shall we then hearken unto you to do all this what? Great evil. What great evil? They were what? Marrying wives. They were sleeping with women, strange women, new women, to transgress against our God in what?
Marrying strange wives. And
New
Solomon
women, all
Solomon's
the
the
time.
wisest man ever, huh?
Yeah, think about that.
Yeah,
This sin he could not restrain.
right.
And think about that. Is that not what it says, right? What did he say is going to happen in the last days?
Same thing.
They took to them what?
Wives,
Of all which they,
shows.
and as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they what? Married wives. And so if you think that just means standing before a pastor in a congregation and saying, I do, you're wrong. He's
Right.
talking about going in unto a woman.
You're right.
And that's what he says. Shall we then hearken unto you to do all this great evil, to transgress against our God? How are we going to do all this evil and transgress against our God? In what? Marrying strange wives. So what's the solution? And Ezra has the solution. So let's look at this. So let's say that you are a Christian who, after you got saved, slept with 10 women. Means you have 10 wives.
Right.
What's the solution? How do you, because you're spiritually connected to, you're kind of spiritually connected to all of them. I mean, because there's something that, let's put it this way, this is something that you have to stop.
Right.
This is something that if you don't get control of it and you don't stop it, you're going to end up missing the kingdom and going to hell for 1,000 years.
Right.
And I know that's not an issue with you guys, but I need y'all to see it just because I want you to know this is the sign that we're in the last days. Right. Sexual perversion in this world is one of the greatest signs that we're going to have.
Right.
Now, when Ezra had prayed, and when he had confessed, weeping and casting himself down before the house of God, there assembled unto him out of Israel a very great congregation of men and women and children. For the people wept very sore. And Shechaniah, the son of Jehiel, one of the sons of Elam, answered and said unto Ezra, We have trespassed against our God. How have we trespassed? And have taken what?
Strange wives.
Strange wives of the people of the land. Yet now there is hope in Israel concerning this thing. Now therefore let us make a covenant with our God. Now look what he says. to put away all the what?
Wives.
And such are born of them. Talking about even the children. According to the counsel of my Lord, and of those that tremble at the commandment of our God, and let it be done according to the law. Arise, for this matter belongeth unto thee, and we also will be with thee. Be of good courage, and do it. Do what? Put away these wives. Then arose Ezra, and made the chief priests, the Levites, and all Israel to swear that they should do according to this word. So the answer, Ezra, is all these strange wives, you need to put them away. So let's go down a little bit farther in the verse. in the chapter. And Ezra the priest stood up and said unto them, You have transgressed and have taken strange wives, to increase the trespass of Israel. Now, therefore, here's the first thing you need to do. Make confession unto the Lord of your fathers and do his pleasure. Here's the second thing you need to do. Confess and do what? Separate yourselves from the people of the land and from the who? Strange wives. Now listen, strange wives are new women that you have slept with. Then all the congregation answered and said with a loud voice, As thou hast said, Ezra, so must we do. But the people are many, and it is a time of much rain. And we're not able to stand without, neither is this a work of one or two. For we are many that have transgressed in this thing, taking strange wives. Let now our rulers of all the congregation stand, and let all of them which have taken strange wives in our cities come at appointed times, and with them the elders of every city and the judges thereof, until the furious wrath of our God for this matter be turned from us. Only Jonathan the son of Asahel, and Jahaziah the son of Tikvah were employed about this matter. And Meshullam and Shabbathiah the Levite helped them. Excuse me. And the children of the captivity did so. And Ezra the priest, with certain chief of the fathers, after the houses of the fathers, and all of them by their names, were separated and sat down in the first day of the 10th month to examine the matter. And they made an end with all the men that had what? Taken strange wives by the first day of the first month. So by the end of the month, by the beginning of that first day of the month, everyone is separated from their strange wives. And among the sons of the priests there were found that had taken strange wives. So he's going to give you, now I'm not going to give you all the list. He's going to tell you all the priests that had taken strange wives. Namely of the sons of Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and his brethren, Maaseiah and Eleazar, and Jerub, and Gedaliah. And they gave their hands that they would put away their wives, and being guilty, they offered a ram of the flock for their trespass. So they put away their wives, and they offered a ram for forgiveness, right?
Right.
And so at the end of this chapter, he says, all these had taken strange wives, and some of them had wives by whom they had children. And so God's answer was to do what with the strange wives? To put them, to separate from them, to put them away. Because what are they going to make you do? They're going to turn you from your God. They're going to turn you away from God. Is that not what it did with Solomon?
Yes.
Now, I believe that it is better, like Paul said, to be as he is, with no wife. But he says, this is a true saying, if a man desire the office of a bishop, he desire for good work. A bishop then must be blameless. Guess what?
One wife.
The husband of one wife. If you've got many wives, you had best put them away. Doesn't mean that you can't ever be a bishop, but it means that you best have one wife, right, or no wife. He said, let the deacons be the husbands of one wife. If any be blameless, the husband of one wife. Do you think that Abraham's life would have been a little bit easier if he had not taken Hagar?
Yeah, and ours too.
Yeah. I think we see these types of things all throughout the scripture, right? If Laban had not put Leah in there, because remember Leah, remember the story about the mandrakes, and Rachel comes and asks for mandrakes. You're going to take you took my husband, now you want my mandrakes? So Leah considered when Rachel come along and married after she was married to him, Leah did not like it at all that her sister was married to her husband.
Right.
So Jesus is sitting at the well, right? And the woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Jesus saith unto her, Go, call thy husband, and come hither. And the woman answered and said, I have what?
No husband.
No husband. And Jesus said unto her, Hast well said, I have no husband. You have what?
Mm.
You got 5 husbands. What did that just tell you about her? She had slept with what? She had slept with 5 men. Now, we talked about the sin of Balaam. Balaam cast a stumbling block because he taught Balak, the king of the Moabites,
Right.
to basically seduce the children to commit fornication. And so we see here, it says, Unto the angel of the church of Thyatira write, These things saith the Son of God, who hath eyes like a flame unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass. I know thy works, and charity, and service, and faith, and thy patience, and thy works, and the last to be more than the first. Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess. But just like Balaam, guess what she was doing? To teach and to seduce my servants to do what? To commit fornication. Now, I'm going to tell you, I think it's more subtle in the age that we live. I think that we have a lot of people that find a lot of different reasons for divorce and to marry someone else. And when I say marry someone else, to sleep with someone else, to make someone else their wife. And I think that when you go around teaching believers that it's all right to do certain things, you are doing what? You're doing what Jezebel and you're doing what Balaam did. Mm-hmm. You're teaching God's people, right, and seducing them to commit what? Fornication, because God considers it fornication. Say, I gave her space to repent of her fornication, and she repented not. He says, Behold, I will cast her into a bed, and them that commit adultery with her into great tribulation, except they repent of their deeds. And I will kill her children with death, and all the churches shall know that I am he which searcheth your reins and hearts. And look what he says, I will give unto every one of you according to your what? Works. Your works. So if you're committing fornication, if you got many wives, if you got many strange wives, you better put them away now and quit doing it. Mm-hmm. Or else God is going to throw you into the same bed with Jezebel, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be good for you. No. So you are going to, everyone is going to receive according to what? Your works. And is that not what he says at the judgment seat? Wherefore we labor, that whether present or absent, we may be accepted of him. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that everyone may receive the things done in the body. Now look what he says. According to your what? Your works, according to that he hath done, according to his works, whether it be what?
Good or bad.
Good or bad. You're going to receive according to your works. If you have taught children to, if you're a fornicator, if you're an adulterer, God will forgive it. Right? Only the sin of blasphemy of the Holy Spirit will God not forgive. He'll forgive it, but you better turn from it. You better flee fornication. It is a sin that ultimately God is going to get tired of, and he's going to judge this world. He says, whatsoever you do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord you shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ. But he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which what? He hath done. And we're going to receive according to that which we have what? Done. And guess what?
No respect of persons.
He doesn't care. You can say, oh, well, God loves me. He's still not respecting a person. He loves everyone. God so loved the world.